This is kind of like a seminary teacher, we never know how to work those things.
This is just like my seminary class.
I'm sorry, guys, I can't get it to work. We're now, open your books.
That will be how we'll start. Well, before we get started, I just want to say thanks, man. You are awesome. You came through for me. Everybody can watch the video that my family left me this week, minus a couple of them that are still here. But
Oh yeah, this is definitely like seminary watching videos.
that's it. It's not video though. We'll just do some clips.
That's what our Brandon says too.
Yeah, I know. He's pretty good, right?
You could say that.
So we'll just take a few minutes. I'm grateful for you guys coming this morning and participating. And before we get started, we'll talk this morning about remove assumption for a clear vision. Kind of get into that. But I have a question for each one of you before we get started. Most of you in here drive or have driven. While you're out there on the road, have any of you ever been cut off by another vehicle? Raise your hand if that's happened to you.
Oh, never.
Never? Especially those who deliver postal services, right? So pretty much everybody that can drive has had that experience. So to start off with, I want to watch a little video, and as you watch this video, it's going to be somebody getting cut off. I want you to think of your experience. What was going through your mind, what you were thinking, kind of that situation. So as this plays, think about those things.
Yeah, it's like my view.
I was like the FedEx truck, don't be the FedEx truck.
It's bigger than mine. Yeah, that's why I'm always getting cut off. I might stop.
So I kind of heard what someone thought of that, right? Moron, right? He didn't hold back.
Good morning, Arizona! That's what went through my head.
So,
Sorry.
Wow.
Gotta make sure.
Can't believe you interrupt drivers like this.
many of us have different thoughts when something like that happens, right? I think sometimes we may even assume what was going through that individual's mind. In fact, some of you might have said, I wish that guy had some common sense. What the heck is wrong with him? Right? We think that they're thinking about themselves. They're the only one that's important. They don't even care about the people around them. At least those are some of the thoughts that go through my mind.
Maybe they're blinded and because you can't see out of that mirror.
But that is a possibility, isn't it? What are some other things that may have gone through your mind as you watch that and you rethink the experiences you had?
He wasn't even close.
He wasn't even close.
They're from the valley.
That is a possibility. Those are things that you say, right? Oh, it's time of year, right? Go home. So we begin to assume what the other person was thinking and what was going through their mind and why they're doing what they're doing. Common sense leads to assumption. And as we assume things, we lack something. When we assume something, we are not communicating with that individual. We're thinking what is going through their mind, or they should think the way I think. We go through that type of mindset as we assume. And so, Christopher Columbus, most of you know his story. Back in his time, people assumed that the world was flat. This is what the world would look like for each one of us if the world was flat.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd like to be going down that straight off the side, right? You could be like these animals right here, right, falling off the edge. And that's what the individuals during the time of Christopher Columbus said to him as he wanted to go out and sail. They said, "What are you doing? You're going to sail to the end and you're going to fall off the edge of the cliff." And that'll be the end of that. And he didn't listen to the assumptions that people were making. They didn't have the knowledge, they didn't have the vision to see what was out there he wanted to go and explore. And so, when we think of assumptions, I want you to think that it could be like a cloudy day. When we have clouds in the air, our vision is not as good as it would be on a day without the clouds. Would everybody agree with that? The clouds cause us to have less vision, we can't see as much. There is beauty there, but we're missing a whole big picture of the beautiful mountains filled with snow.
This looks like Washington.
It looks like Washington. They disrupt our vision. Most of you would recognize this big E as what?
Start of a vision test.
Start of a vision test, right?
Letter.
A big letter on the top of the vision test.
That's
Now,
nice.
I don't know, maybe some of you have had an experience different than me, but when I've gone into the ophthalmologist to sit down for a vision test, they don't start by saying, can you read the top number to me, right? They assume that I can read the big E, right? They kind of cruise on down a little bit, get a little further down to see if my vision's any better, and then they backtrack when they find out that it's not, right? But they don't start here. And so that's kind of the thought process I want to get with you is we shouldn't assume that people can't read that or can read that. We need to do something. And so I want to do something with you real quick.
I can't afford that.
I want you to think of something that the person sitting next to you, or the person outside the room, would know about you, or that you assume that they would know about you. Think about something, just real easy. And what I want you to do is turn to the person next to you and begin to have a quick conversation with them without telling them what you assume that they know. And see how that goes. So quickly go ahead and do that.
Well, this is like our dinner date.
Oh! Oh! You just got roasted. You want some ice for that bird, bro?
Hey, you're not supposed to be talking together, you're supposed to be talking quiet.
So,
How's it going with it?
I don't know.
Pretty easy. I didn't understand the question.
Neither did
It's
I.
like it's very up, doesn't have time, but it's okay.
See, look, what we were assuming is that the other person assumed that they knew the
We're supposed to
question.
be
Alright.
talking.
let's come back. And so take that thought you had now, and instead of assuming that they understand what you thought or meant, it didn't matter. It probably would have been the same whether you were sitting there or not.
I don't know. Yes, dear.
Yes, there you go. So take that assumption that you had in your mind, and now, rather than assume that they know, communicate with them what thought you had, and see how that conversation goes. Go ahead and do that.
Well, I'm.
So, I guess you were supposed to assume something that
That was the one thing. No,
I
you
thought
Yeah.
All right.
Can I ask?
So let's come back together here real quick. Was there a difference between the two?
Yeah.
More fluid? The first one might have been a little more awkward, right?
Yeah.
Assumptions can cause that awkwardness or that feeling of, why aren't they saying things the way I see it? Why aren't they doing what I do? Why don't they understand what I see? But if we communicate, communication is the key to getting rid of those assumptions. As we communicate with each other, we begin to understand, we begin to be able to see, especially those who have been through marriage, you begin to see things through someone else's eyes, right? We're not always the same. And if we assume, especially in our marriages, or even with our children, in fact, 3 of mine are in here, and I didn't ask them, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to share a little story with you about how I assume. Our little one over here, that's been going back and forth, he likes to scream. And so usually when he's screaming, one of the other two is doing something to him. And so as I sit and do my schoolwork, oftentimes they're up here and I'm downstairs and I hear the screaming and I automatically assume that one of these two did something to this one.
That's a good assumption.
Well, usually you'd think so, right? But what happens when that's not the case? Sometimes he's screaming because something he did. And these guys are nowhere near. And so I get on the other two, assuming that they did something, to find out that they were nowhere near him. And so what happens to our relationship or our ability to function together when I assume something? I kind of ruin that foundation, right? Put the crack in there. And so in order to have a sure foundation, we need to be able to communicate with individuals. Rather than assume I should have gotten up and went into the room and taken care of that, communicated with my children in that situation. If we communicate, we will have a clearer vision of the situation or the relationship. So I'm encouraging us to have that clear vision and see others as our Savior sees them. And as we do that, our Savior understands who we are. He doesn't assume anything about us or any situations that are going on. And so we will begin to see things and people as they really are if we begin to communicate. And so this is it. Remember back when we were talking about Christopher Columbus and how they thought the world was flat? He didn't assume the same things that they did. He went out, he communicated with others, he got himself out there, and he actually sees things as they really are. And so I encourage each one of us to kind of recap where we have come from the beginning all the way to where we are now. Next time you begin to assume something in a situation, I'm going to ask you that you take a step back and begin to try to see things. Don't let those clouds disrupt your vision. See things in a different light and communicate with the individual or the group that you're meeting with and begin to see things as they see it without assuming that they know or think what you think. And if you can do this, I promise you that you'll have a clearer vision to see things as they really are, or even more importantly, see things as our Savior. Thank you. All right, Ross, hang on just a minute. I got to show that you guys were all here.
You have to take a picture?
What class is this for?
Bro.
All right, here's the audience.
What's all you brothers?
Hey.
Oh!
Yes, you saw that one run through a few times.
They're gonna say, those is what you got?
We're gonna hear Brian and I's
That's a
conversation
rough
because we're talking about everybody else.